As you can see in the video, I've already ruled my horizontal measurements, the waistline, the hip line, and the skirt length. This skirt is going to have a band, so that's why I removed 1.5 inches. You can use 2 inches before taking your measurements for the band. So my hip line is 8.5, then the skirt hem, which is 25 inches, and I had 1.5 inches for the folding allowance. This is the measurements we'll be using. My client waist is 27.5 and I divided it by 4, and the hip is for 3.5 and we divide it by 4. I'm marking 1/4 of the waist measurement plus 1 inches for that on the waistline. I'm also marking 1/4 of the hip measurement on the hip line, and on the hem line I removed 1 inches from the hip measurement and I marked it on the hem line. So I'm connecting my mark points with my pattern master. On the hip line, I moved down 2 inches from the hip line, that's 2 inches, before gluing my slant line to the hem line, because I don't want that area of my skirt to be sharp. There's no sharp edge on the woman body, so this is what you should be having. The next thing you are going to do, from the top line of the front, you mark 1/2 inch and you rule a line approximately 3 inches from that mark point before you curve it back to the side seam. That is 3 inches, because the waistline is not always straight. The next thing I'm going to do is to mark the dart point. I mark 4 inches from the center front. The dart length is going to be 6 inches from the waistline. 6 inches from the waistline. And you don't need that original waistline anymore. So my darts, you are going to the dart amount is 1 inches. Then you divide 1 inches by 2, which will give you 1/2 inches. Then you mark 1/2 inches on both line of the dart line. Then you connect the dart line, the dart amount, to the dart point. Now we have a dart on our skirts. Okay. For the hem part of the skirt, I'm going to fold my skirt hem backward. You know the line is slant. Then I use my trace wheel to trace the line to know the direction of the seam on the folding allowance, so that when I fold, everything will fall in place. So that's that for our skirt. I went ahead to add my seam allowance, 1/2 inches on the top line, 1/2 inches. The side seam is 1 inch. I extend my dart to the seam allowance, and the side seam is 1 inches. So I'm going to connect my mark points with my pattern master. Remember to extend that part by 2 inches before connecting it to the hem line. Now our front part of the skirt is ready, and you are going to be cutting this part of the skirt on fold. So at this point, if you are here to subscribe to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe, like, share this video, and please give this video a thumb up and click on the notification bell, so when I post new video, you are the first person to get notified. To drop the back skirt pattern, you can see I've placed my front on a new pattern paper, and I rule a line 1 inch from the paper edge. That is going to be my zipper allowance before placing my front skirt pattern on the paper. That is 1 inch. You can use half inch. Use what works for you. And the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be tracing. For the skirt back pattern, everything is the same except for the waistline, which is going to be altered. So I'm transferring mark points, the folding allowance, the side seam, before slanting it to the hem line. Just follow everything I'm doing in the video. I'm transferring notch points from the front pattern to the back pattern. I'm transferring my dart points to the back pattern as well. And I transfer my dart point with a pin. You do yours like this. That's how to transfer the dart point to a fresh pattern paper. So I'm going to trace my new lines. I'm starting with the skirt hem. The side seam, I have broken lines, so I'm trying to connect those broken lines. The hip line, and the darts as well. So I'm also going to add seam allowance at the top, at the waistline of the back skirt. So you're going to be cutting 2 pieces for this. From the hip line at the center back, you mark 2 inches like the way you did for the front pattern, and at the hem you are going to be marking 1 inch, because I want the hem part of my skirt to be snatched, to look penciled. So I'm going to connect this to the 2 inch I marked from the hip line. So I'm going to create a new zipper allowance and connect it back to that 2 inches point. Now our pencil skirt is ready. The next I'm going to do, I'm going to be folding the skirt hem, the original skirt hem, not the folding allowance. Then I use my chisel to trace the zipper allowance, because that line is slant, so that when you want to fold this part of the skirt, it will be very easy for you to connect your points and your seams together. You are going to be cutting this on fold. This is the front skirt pattern, and you'll be cutting it on fold. Yeah. And for the back, you are cutting 2 pieces of this. Our pencil skirt is ready. I'm going to mark my seam allowance from the pattern. Remember, we trace it out including the seam allowance, so I'm going to indicate the seam allowance for the pattern. And this is what you should have at the end of the day. For the skirt band, I added 2 inches to the skirt band for the band extension. So the width of my skirt band is 4 inches. 4 inches. Because I'm going to call this unfold, I divide the skirt band measurements by 2. So I'm having the half measurement here. So that's that for the waistband. Your waist measurement plus 2 inches. That's all you need to get the horizontal measurements of this band. So you are going to call this unfold. I went ahead to cut the band after drafting it. So after drafting your skirt, pencil skirt, this is what you should have as your pattern: the band, the front and the back skirt patterns. Thanks.